So the city or Metro Trans has put out the draft plan for the E-line. The plan is in the comment period right now. We have invited from Metro Trans, we have two people. We have Juan Rangel, the project manager, and then Kyle Burrows, a transit planner with Metro Trans, to come and make a presentation to us tonight, and then also to listen to the concerns of people. So during this time, the first 10 to 15 minutes are theirs to make the presentation. And then following the presentation will be a period of questions. Now, in order to try to manage the questions, what we ask is that you submit your questions inside the chat, right? So you will present the questions. I'll go ahead and ask the questions. I may consolidate questions if they're a similar topic of there. And ideally, if you can, in your question, state what your role in this is, because I know we have some business owners, they have, a set of concerns. We have transit users have a set of concerns. We have others that have concerns. If you can kind of clarify what your role or perspective is, I think it'll help out. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Kyle and Juan. The floor is yours. And then, like I said, folks, if you have questions, please post them in the chat. And none of that should stop anybody from going to submit comments online to the Metro Transit page. Over to you.
Great. Thank you, Steve. And thank you to the Linden Hills neighborhood for having Juan and I here tonight. As Steve mentioned, my name is Kyle O'Donnell Burrows, and I'm here with Juan Rangel, and we are with Metro Transit and here to share some information with you about the Metro E-line, which we have released our draft, the draft corridor plan for public comment, which of course we're sort of in the middle of here today, and we'll be happy to kind of take questions and listen to your feedback here as well. I'll go ahead and just kind of go through these slides here. First, maybe Becky or Steve, a nod if you can see the screen that I'm sharing. Great, okay. So just a real quick overview of the E-line. E-line is the bus rapid transit line similar to the A-line or the C-line, which are currently under operation. It will be a substantial upgrade to the existing Route 6 that of course goes through the Linden Hills neighborhood down to Southdale Transit Center and a little bit farther south of that, and then up into downtown Minneapolis via Hennepin Avenue and across over to the University of Minnesota, Marcy Holmes neighborhood as well. The E-line will follow that, the Route 6 alignment from the University of Minnesota and extend a little bit farther out to the the West Gate station on the Green Line, along 4th and University, through downtown Minneapolis, through kind of Uptown neighborhood, through Linden Hills, Chain of Lakes area, and then connect to Southdale Transit Center via France Avenue. It is a fully funded project with about a $60 million preliminary budget, which will be refined as the project advances. And we are targeting construction to begin in 2024 with a planned opening year of 2025. It'll be a high frequency service operating every 10 minutes for most of the day. So really being able to provide that level of service that folks don't need to use a schedule to plan their trip. They're able to just walk out to the bus station when they're ready to take their trip, and the bus will be there hopefully within the next 5 minutes or so. So why arterial BRT as opposed to the existing Route 6? As the previous slide noted, the Route 6 is one of our highest ridership routes in the Metro Transit system. There is about it's in the top 5 of our local routes, with about 8,000 rides per day prior to the pandemic. And within the pandemic, it remained a really high ridership route because in particular, it provides a number of different trip purposes other than just the kind of typical 9 to 5 downtown commute. It really meets a lot of needs throughout the community. And so weathered the storm more than some of the other kind of more express style routes. But really our goal is to provide a faster and more reliable and really more attractive bus service on these high ridership, well-used corridors like the Route 6 to really make an improvement out there that it sort of meets the level of demand that's out there today. So we'd be addressing and improving the inadequate passenger facilities that are out there today for the volume of people using them today, and that really is commensurate with the importance of this route and improving that experience and comfort for riders at stops and in the vehicles. And really the Route 6 stands out, I think, in particular because of how important and efficient a mode it is to actually help people travel through the Route 6, the Hennepin Avenue corridor. So this graphic here, this data point is actually from Hennepin Avenue, a little bit north of Linden Hills, but shows that about buses make up about 3% of the vehicles in this section of Hennepin Avenue, but really make up about 45 to 49% of the overall people who are moving to and through the corridor. So getting on and off the bus and moving through that section. And this slide just shows an example of some of the existing Route 6 bus stops that are out there today and sort of identifying, where we can be making improvements in adding an enhanced station experience for waiting customers and for folks who are going to be riding the bus. And so this slide just kind of shows at a high level what the stations will look like. So every LHiNC station will have a pylon marker here that indicates that it kind of has that sort of traditional Metro Transit Circle T that indicates it's a bus stop, as well as real-time arrival time information. So people who are waiting for the bus can know when their bus will be coming, to be able to kind of see when they can expect the bus to arrive. The stations will also have off-board fare collection equipment. So similar to light rail, arterial BRT folks will pay before getting on the bus, and then they'll be able to board at any one of 3 doors on the bus, so that'll speed up the boarding experience and make it more convenient for customers who are waiting and for folks who are continuing on with their trip. Of course, you can see the shelter with light and heat. So this is the small size shelter here, which is kind of the standard starting point here for most shelters. It includes obviously static transit information, light and heat, as I mentioned, trash and recycling bins that are excuse me, maintained by Metro Transit, benches and bicycle parking in most stations, though of course that can depend on site constraints at particular designs. And then importantly, the slightly elevated curb, a 9-inch curb as opposed to the standard 6-inch curb, which will help people board the bus faster and will make it easier for folks with mobility challenges to board the bus without having to wait for the bus to deploy its lift. I want to cover a little bit of some of the early planning that we've done on the E-line. So back in 2018 and 2019, we evaluated potential termini, so endpoints on the E-line and alignment alternatives, and ultimately landed on the recommendation that's shown here. So relevant for Linden Hills, going through Linden Hills via Sheridan and Upton, and then across on 44th Street down to France Avenue. And the kind of primary rationale for that was to connect the important neighborhood and really regional commercial nodes and kind of key destinations along this corridor. So of course, Linden Hills, Upton, and 43rd being one of them, but France and 44th, France and 47th, where most of the Southwest High School students board in the light, France and 50th, and then kind of going on from there. We had some pretty significant outreach and engagement efforts associated with that study and that recommendation, including a community advisory committee that was made up of residents and Route 6 riders along the Route 6, did some open houses and door knocking, and really got a lot of public support and positive support for this recommended alignment. And that alignment was adopted by the Metropolitan Council in January of 2020, which sort of adopted that alignment into our policy here. What we're doing now is, since that time, we've been working on kind of identifying the station locations and what the stations would look like at those particular intersection locations. So since the end of January 2020, we've been doing a lot of work internally at Metro Transit and with our local partners on working on identifying where should the E-line stop. And that's what the draft corridor plan shows. So it includes the proposed platform locations at each station location, which part of the intersection will the E-line be stopping at, and kind of what that station will look like at a high level. And so you can see here, this is an example at University and 27th, and kind of the existing condition and the proposed condition. And these items here at each station location are what we're asking for feedback from on the community here today and through the end of October, and then of course coming back out again in the future. And we've undergone a number of similar engagement strategies. Of course, we're a part of that right now with working with neighborhood organizations, but really kind of directing most folks to submit their comments via our website, which has kind of a comment field for each platform location, and we're collecting comments that way. Next steps, we're really at the beginning of the corridor plan public process right now. So we, on the draft corridor plan, have been seeking comment. We started September 20th and we'll continue through October 31st. We will be then kind of making revisions to the plan, based in part on the feedback that we received, and coming back out with a recommended corridor plan for another public engagement period, really beginning the end of January and plan through February of 2022, before then revising that recommended plan into a final plan and bringing that for Metropolitan Council consideration to approve in March of 2022. So I want to direct you to kind of the primary ways we're looking for comment right now, which is on our website, where you can see the full plan in quite a lot of detail. Obviously, I have just a quick skim through the materials tonight, but you can provide comment on the survey we have there, or of course, email us at eline@metrotransit.org. And with that, I will stand for questions. And Steve, you mentioned you were going to kind of coordinate those in the chat. So I guess I'll just look to you to kind of coordinate that, and I'll start replying.
Okay, I think the first question is, I know there's a lot of interest in particular. Two things. One is, can you address what the research was or the data that was used on ridership and routes in the plan? That would be one. And then the second one is, can you address in particular the 43rd and Upton stop, the design considerations, and where you are today? So those are the first two questions.
Yeah, great question. So in terms of ridership, we really look at the existing Route 6 as kind of the basis of where are the high ridership stops today. And those were sort of a key indicator for us on what good candidate station locations would be for the E-line. The high ridership Route 6 stops are really the stops that are most useful to people on the Route 6. And so those kind of were sort of the initial starting point. And then just kind of leading into the 43rd and Upton question, there's about 150 ons and offs there per day on average, which is a relatively high ridership stop on the E line. I think really reflecting its importance in the community here, obviously, and as well as folks who use the Route 6 up and down the route. And so really that stood out as a sort of a good, an important station to include in the E line. And then in terms of the sort of the design considerations, why don't I can pull up a sort of a supplemental quick slide here that just shows this information. Let me pull that up for you. Excuse me. So can folks see, Steve, can you nod if you see the layout there? So this is 43rd and Upton, what's proposed, what's included in the plan. I would encourage folks to, if you haven't already, go, take a look on the website. It has this information as well. And it's shown as far side, so the northbound, looking at really kind of the northeast and southwest quadrants of the intersection. And really that being far side, what we call far side, so being through the traffic light for an E-line platform, is really sort of the ideal condition for the operation and for the kind of speed and reliability of arterial BRT service. And so that is looking at kind of the primary motivation for being at the locations that we've shown here. And then of course showing the platform, the lengths of the platform are about 60 feet, enough to accommodate a 60-foot bus, which would be with the E-line, and then has some space on either end of the platform to taper up and down to that, from the 6-inch curb to the 9-inch curb. So those are really kind of the considerations that went into the platform locations here at Upton and 43rd.
Okay, thank you. So questions about, this would be about, once again, it will at the Upton 43rd intersection, the tree removal, will there be tree removal in order to facilitate the construction? One. Question two is net impact to parking spaces inside the Linden Hills downtown area, if you know that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are trees currently, obviously boulevard trees that are mature trees in the area that have been identified as in the draft plan for the proposed platform locations. And so those would likely be removals, though we do, we continue to work with in instances where direct impacts to trees can't be avoided in the platform design. We do try to mitigate those impacts in platform design. So after kind of in the next phase of this project, if those impacts can't be avoided, we do plan to we coordinate with City of Minneapolis and the Minneapolis Park Board and other parties as appropriate to be thinking about potential relocation or on-site replacement options. But nothing at this phase in the project on that respect would be determined at this point. That would be at a later design phase of the project. And then your other question was about parking. And I think this the platforms would the platforms as shown would probably remove about 8 existing parking spots, though the existing bus stop for the Route 6 would be removed and consolidated with the E-Line platform, and there would be some opportunity to replace some parking at that location. So probably, up to about 2 spaces. So in terms of what the net impact is, estimating about 6.
Okay, there have been some comments on it. So the design of the stop, the 60-foot push out or of the curb for the buses, and with the word intrusive being used. So I guess the question would be, thinking about the design, is that set in stone, or are there options in terms of the intrusiveness or the out of the sidewalk at the stations? And then why move from the existing stations to the new stops? For example, south side of Upton to 43rd going north to north side of Upton to 43rd going north.
Yeah, those are great questions. And I think that goes back to, the trying to only stop once at the intersections with traffic signals, right? So we implement transit signal priority with these projects that help the green light go a little bit longer, so the bus can kind of go through the intersection and then stop at the far side of the intersection, boarding passengers and alighting passengers, and then continuing on. Often what happens at near side, which is kind of what the existing condition is. That's the term for that, where the bus stops at the signal, is that the bus will stop while there's a green light to board and alight passengers. Then the light will turn red, and then the bus could go at that point, but is actually waiting for the bus. And so that adds a lot of uncertainty and variability into the bus schedule, and tends to slow down service. So our starting point for BRT style of service is to get to the far side, get through the intersection before stopping. The other question about, is this set in stone, and kind of what are kind of the other design considerations? I think we, as I noted earlier here, we're seeking public feedback from the public right now on these proposed concepts. So, no, this is not set in stone, and we do plan to come back out with a recommended a recommended corridor plan that could make changes to this site or to other sites throughout the corridor.
All right, thanks. Doing great so far. I appreciate your patience with the questions.
Of course.
So the next one, I feel bad. I always ask questions in a series of 2. So another 2-parter here. And it will start with, during the questionnaire or community engagement portion of this that came before we are today. 1, were businesses ever asked, were they part of the community questionnaire when that was done? And then the follow-on to that is, when these plans are done, is there a consideration to the impact of the plan on businesses?
So answering your first question, yes. Yeah, so during the alignment phase, identifying the alignment phase of the corridor, we tried to make a pretty big push back in 2018, 2019 to include residents, riders, and business owners, and tenants of facilities as well. And then in terms of considering the impact on business owners, I guess maybe a little bit more, if there's a little bit more detail to that question, we do try to capture the overall impact on the community and our riders and residents by documenting kind of what the existing condition is and what the change would be, and then what the different types of improvements would be coming through there. But in terms of like doing a study on change in economic activity or something like that, that's not something that's been done in the past.
Okay. Next question, this gets to the buses themselves. It'll be with the E-Line, is this an all new bus fleet to the expanded size? And then are these buses hybrid, electric, diesel? This is a noise maintenance, environment, sustainable type question.
Yeah, that's a great question. And so these will be new buses in the sense that they will look different than the existing Route 6 buses that go through this area today. They'll be the same buses. We'll be adding to the fleet of arterial BRT buses that we have today that are operating on the C line, so 60-foot buses there. So they won't be new to Metro Transit. There will be more of them to serve the E line and the B line, which will be coming as well on Lake Street. In terms of the power source, or they'll be likely hybrid electric. So like we operate a number of hybrid buses today that are sort of what we use, for example, on Nicollet Mall. So running, they run quieter. They get better mileage than the typical diesel buses. Yeah.
Okay. Next question is the Uptown Transit Station. The plan to reopen, restore, go back to full operations there. Is there a plan for that? And then there was a comment from Frank Hornstein, our representative, about with the funding release from the state, I believe it was, is there a chance of this moving up a year to open earlier, say 2023 instead of 2024 or 5?
Yeah, great questions, and thanks for joining us, Representative Hornstein. The scheduled driver is less about the funding availability at this point, though, and more about completing the federal environmental process and the design and engineering process and construction process. So the availability of the state funding doesn't really change our opening timeline at this point. And then I'm sorry, Steve, I've forgotten the first part of your question there. I was doing so good with these double questions for.
No, that's my fault. So it was when will the Uptown reopen?
Oh, and sure. So the Uptown Transit Station.
Yes, sir.
So that'll be that the E-Line will stop. Will use the Uptown Transit Station, and so there wouldn't be much of a change to the Uptown Transit Station, other than adding kind of some additional signage information and the fare collection equipment with the implementation of the E-Line in 2025.
Okay, so it's 8:07. So just for transparency to everybody, I think what would be ideal, Kyle, is if you could kind of highlight in maybe 1 or 2 minutes where you think people should look at the plan to get the best understanding about what the E-Line plan is today. So if you can highlight, if you want, or if there is places they should look. So if you can take like 1 or 2 minutes to wrap up, then I'll finish with like what our next steps are in the neighborhood.
Yes, that's great. I will do that. And let me kind of by way of supporting that, pull something up real quick here. I think the best way to kind of get more information about this plan is to visit our website. And can folks see my screen here sharing kind of a view of our website now? Great. So we have kind of the complete set of information on our website. And maybe Juan, I'll ask you to drop this in the chat if you could, if you haven't already. But we have kind of a quick summary of the plan, and then the availability of to kind of read the full PDF of the plan, which includes a lot of the planning history and kind of overall information about the anticipated ridership and kind of really what the purpose and need of the E-line is. And then we also have the availability for folks to view an individual station and submit a comment. And so following that link shows you kind of some information about the specific dimensions of a typical E-line platform, and then lists every E-line station. So, you know, folks obviously are very interested in the Uptown and 43rd station, so you can click on that link, and it shows you kind of the information that we've reviewed here today, and has the opportunity to submit a comment on this plan. So I would encourage folks to, if you haven't done that already, please go ahead and do that. And of course, that's true for all of the stations that you might be interested in, as well as kind of some general information there. So that's what I would encourage folks to do primarily. And I guess Steve, then maybe I'll turn it over to you. Actually, if you'll let me kind of do kind of one quick piece. I know you know, I've been following a little bit of the kind of the Facebook comments that have been posted around Linden Hills and kind of some of the other items there. And I know, you know, there are some concerns about, you know, the station location here at 43rd and Upton. You know, and I think, you know, from our perspective, Metro Transit's perspective, you know, this station is where it is because people want to come here to Upton and 43rd, and it's a high ridership local stop. It will be a high ridership E-line stop that will bring people, you know, serve the neighborhood well and bring people to and from the neighborhood. And so that's kind of what our kind of, you know, high level basic thought process was around kind of identifying this location in the draft corridor plan. But with that, Steve, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, one last question.
Sure.
Comments, the comments that people submit, are these a matter of open public record so that people will be able to see a summary of the comment before, you know, as this thing progresses from phase to phase?
Yeah, so typically how that's done is we try to just kind of list the comments and create sort of a comment register that just kind of shows kind of all of the comments that we did receive, and we take those of course seriously as well, and look at those as well.
All right, super, thank you. Thanks, Kyle, for taking the time, for you and Juan for being here tonight. All right, so just for transparency, you know, here, folks in Linden Hills, we encourage everyone to comment using the official mechanism. We will take the chat log that's here. We will submit that to Metro Transit. And then we know that there's an issue. We know that there's a lot of concern about the 43rd and Upton piece. We know that there's a concern with the businesses there. So we have invited, and Metro Trans has agreed that sometime, and we were working out the dates, it could be sometime over the next 3 weeks, that they'll come down and kind of do a walk with some of the businesses just to talk through, get a feel on the ground and a listening session to get there. So the whole idea is, I think that Kyle's been great about coming to answer questions, and they're willing to come back and answer some more questions and talk and to listen to the concerns of the neighborhood. So we'll sort out the date of that with the businesses to make that happen, to do this, kind of a walkthrough is what I'm calling it, exploration of options with the businesses. And then from there, this will proceed, with the dates that they showed earlier in terms of submission of comments by the 31st of October in the schedule that Kyle presented. So that's the discussion on E-Line. I realize a lot of people submitted comments or questions. I tried to highlight the ones that I, to capture the gist of what people were asking. If I didn't or I offended you, then I apologize for it. But I think we're trying to do our best to make sure that we facilitate the conversation or the ability of people to provide input here. And that's it, folks. The time is now 8:15. Thanks for taking the time to join us tonight. Hopefully you enjoyed the presentation of kind of the state of the Linden Hills Council, our annual review. I hope that everyone takes the opportunity to vote for our new board members. And then I hope that you take the time to comment to Metro Trans, excuse me, on your thoughts on the E-Line. But thanks for being here and thanks for participating in our democracy. Everyone have a good night.